The smile on my brother's face was ice cold. Standing in the Art Institute's grand ballroom, Nathan tapped his glass, silencing the industrial elite. He didn't just announce his promotion, he announced a cleanup. To secure our supply chain, he declared, adjusting his silk tie, I am acquiring my sister Haley's failing hobby workshop. It is time for real leadership. He toasted our parents, Richard and Cynthia. They didn't look embarrassed. They looked relieved. They raised their glasses to my public humiliation. My pulse remained steady. I didn't offer them a scene. I simply set my drink down, turned my back on their applause, and walked out the heavy oak doors. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The drive from the Art Institute to the Southside Industrial District took 40 minutes. In that time, I stripped away the daughter they thought they knew and became the CEO they had never bothered to meet. I parked my sedan inside the loading bay of my facility. The moment the heavy steel door rolled down, sealing me in, the scent of expensive perfume was replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of ozone and machine oil. This was my air. This was my reality. I kicked off my heels and walked barefoot across the polished concrete floor. The cold seeped into my skin, grounding me. Around me, the darkness was punctuated by the rhythmic, pulsing standby lights of 20 advanced robotic arms and the hum of server racks that cost more than my parents' entire estate. They called it a failing hobby workshop. I called it the silent architect. My eyes stayed dry. Sorrow was a variable I couldn't afford in this equation. I wasn't grieving, I was calibrating. I walked past the prototyping bay where the Titan microchips were being stress tested. These were the chips Nathan's biggest competitors were currently bidding on, though he didn't know that yet. He thought he was buying scrap metal. He had no idea he was trying to foreclose on a fortress. I climbed the metal stairs to the glass-walled office overlooking the production floor. I sat in my ergonomic chair, the mesh cool against my back, and woke up my terminal. 3 monitors flared to life, cascading streams of data, logistics, and valuations. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from my mother. We're doing this for your own good, Haley. Don't make a scene tomorrow. I didn't reply. I didn't block her. I needed that line open for the morning. Instead, I opened a secure file named Protocol 0. I had created it 3 years ago, the day Nathan stole my first design sketches. Back then, I was too weak to fight. I had told myself I was waiting for the right moment. I realized now I had been waiting for them to force my hand. Tonight, they hadn't just forced it. They had shattered the lock. I began compiling the dossier. Valuation reports from 3 independent auditors. $120 million. Patent registrations. And the client list a list that included the 3 companies currently trying to put my father's logistics firm out of business. I looked at the time. Midnight. The acquisition meeting was set for 9 in the morning. They expected to walk in, hand me a check for pennies, and pat me on the head. They expected a messy, cluttered garage. I picked up the internal phone and dialed the night shift supervisor. Clear the main floor, I said, my voice steady. Set up the conference table in the center of the production bay. Polish everything. I want the machines running at idle, but silent. And print the valuation packets. All 12 copies. Is there a problem, boss? He asked, hearing the edge in my tone. No, I said. We're just having an inspection. Make sure the Titan prototypes are visible. I hung up. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a structural realignment. They wanted to take over my company? Fine. I would show them exactly what they were trying to buy. And then I would show them the price tag. The night was long, but it wasn't lonely. The hum of the cooling fans was my company. As I collated the valuation reports, my mind drifted back, unbidden, to the years of silence that had led to this moment. It hadn't started with malice. It had started with indifference. I remembered being 12 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, excitedly showing my father, Richard, a schematic for a self-watering planter I'd built from scrap parts. He hadn't even looked up from his quarterly report. "That's nice, Haley," he'd said, his voice flat. "But toys won't get you into Wharton. Look at your brother, he's studying market trends." Toys. That word had stuck in my throat like a shard of glass. My inventions were always toys. Nathan's regurgitated textbook theories were genius. I looked down at my hands. They were scarred. There was a thin white line across my left palm from a soldering iron slip when I was 19. My knuckles were rough from years of wrenching bolts. I thought of Nathan's hands, soft, manicured, smelling of expensive lotion. He knew how to shake hands. I knew how to build the world he shook hands in. For 15 years, I had accepted their narrative. I was the dropout, the failure, the one who tinkered in a garage while the real adults did business. But I hadn't been hiding because I was ashamed. I had been hiding because I was building. I realized now that my silence hadn't been weakness. It had been camouflage. In a world that only valued the map, the degrees, the titles, the pedigree, I had been quietly walking the territory. I knew the terrain of this industry better than anyone because I had built it from the ground up, component by component. They thought I was broken because I didn't fit their mold. But you don't use a hammer to write a poem, and you don't use an MBA to build a Titan microchip. I placed the final document into the folder, a patent registration for the Ghost Protocol, the very technology Nathan claimed to have invented. My hands didn't shake. The shame I used to feel was gone, burned away by the heat of the soldering iron and the cold reality of their betrayal. The sun began to bleed through the high windows of the warehouse, painting the concrete floor in shades of industrial gray. It was time. I went to the employee locker room and changed. I didn't put on a power suit. I put on a clean pair of coveralls, dark blue, with my name embroidered on the chest. And underneath, I wore my steel-toed boots. Let them come. Let them see the grease. Let them see the failure. Today, they would learn that the most dangerous thing in the room isn't the man with the loudest voice. It's the woman who knows exactly how the machine works, because she's the one who built it. At precisely 9 o'clock, the heavy rolling door of the loading bay rattled open. Sunlight sliced through the gloom, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. A sleek black town car pulled into the bay, its polished finish looking alien against the stained concrete. My brother Nathan stepped out first. He was wearing a suit that likely cost more than my first 3 prototypes combined. He adjusted his cuffs, wrinkling his nose as the scent of machine oil hit him. Then came my parents, Richard and Cynthia. They stepped gingerly onto the floor, looking around with a mixture of confusion and distaste, as if they had accidentally walked into a sewage treatment plant instead of a place of business. I stood by the conference table I had set up in the center of the production floor, flanked by the silent, brooding shapes of the robotic arms. I didn't move to greet them. I stood with my hands clasped behind my back, my steel-toed boots planted firmly apart. "Good God, Haley," my mother said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. She looked me up and down, her gaze snagging on my dark blue coveralls. "We are here for a business meeting. You look like a mechanic." "I am a mechanic," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the apology she was expecting. "I build things. This is what builders wear." Nathan laughed, a short, sharp sound. He walked over to one of the Titan prototypes, reaching out to tap it with a manicured fingernail. "Don't touch that," I said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. He pulled his hand back, smirking. "Relax, Haley. It's just hardware. We're going to have to scrap most of this anyway. It's a safety hazard. I can't believe you've been operating in this mess. It's a liability waiting to happen." "We're doing this for you," my father added, stepping forward. He looked tired, burdened by the immense weight of his own benevolence. "We can't have the family name associated with a failing garage operation." Nathan is generous enough to absorb your debts and take this off your hands. It's a mercy killing, Haley. You should be grateful. Grateful. The word hung in the air, thick and heavy. They truly believed it. They weren't here to destroy me. In their minds, I was already destroyed. They were here to sweep up the pieces so the neighbors wouldn't see the mess. They felt zero remorse because they saw zero value in what I had created. To them, this wasn't an empire. It was a cry for help. I watched them take their seats at the metal table. They wiped the surface with handkerchiefs before resting their elbows on it. They looked at me with pity. "Sit down, Haley," Nathan said, sliding a thin leather folder across the table. "Let's get this over with. I have a lunch reservation at noon." I pulled out the chair at the head of the table. The metal legs scraped loudly against the concrete, a screech that made my mother wince. I sat down. I didn't open the folder he had given me. I placed my hand on top of it, feeling the thinness of the document inside. It was a contract for pennies, a contract for surrender. "You're right, Nathan," I said, looking him in the eye. "We should get this over with. But before we discuss your offer, we need to review the inventory." "We know what's here," he said dismissively. "Junk and debt." "Not quite," I said. I reached for the cable on the table and plugged it into my laptop. The projector screen behind me flared to life. "You missed a few line items." The projector fan whirred, a low mechanical hum that cut through the silence. Nathan glanced at the screen, then back at his watch. Visibly annoyed, he tapped the leather folder he had slid toward me. $20,000, he said, his voice dripping with false magnanimity. "That covers your outstanding debts on the equipment and leaves you a little seed money to start over. Maybe get a certification, something administrative." I didn't touch the folder. I clicked the remote in my hand. The screen behind me shifted. A single number appeared in bold, black text against a stark white background. $120 million. "That is the current valuation of the silent architect," I said, my voice flat. "Verified as of yesterday afternoon by 3 independent auditors." The silence in the room changed instantly. It shifted from the heavy, suffocating weight of pity to a sharp, brittle vacuum of confusion. My father, Richard, took off his glasses. He started cleaning them with his silk tie, a nervous tic I hadn't seen since his company faced an SEC audit in the 90s. "What is this?" Nathan scoffed, though his smile faltered. "Is this a projection? A fantasy? You can't just type numbers on a screen, Haley." "It's not a projection," I corrected him. "It's an offer. I turned it down last week because it was too low." I clicked the remote again. The screen changed to a list of corporate logos. Massive, global entities. The titans of logistics and heavy industry. "These are my current clients," I said. "You might recognize a few of them. Specifically, the 3 companies that have been systematically undercutting your logistics fleet for the past 18 months. Nathan's face went pale. The blood drained from his cheeks so fast it looked painful. "That's impossible," he whispered. "We handle their overflow. We know their tech stacks. They don't use garage-built hardware." "They do," I said. "They just don't tell you. Because why would they share their competitive advantage with a dying company?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the cold metal table. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. I saw the panic rising in his eyes, but I also saw the confusion. He genuinely didn't understand. This was the illusion of competence. Nathan had spent his entire life studying the map, the degrees, the networking events, the polished boardrooms that he had forgotten how to walk the territory. He assumed that because I lacked the pedigree, I lacked the power. His arrogance was a blind spot so massive it had hidden a titan standing right in front of him. He thought value came from the label on the bottle. He never bothered to taste the wine. "You assumed I was failing because I wasn't loud," I said softly. "You assumed I was broke because I wasn't flashy. But while you were buying suits, Nathan, I was buying market share." My mother, Cynthia, finally spoke. Her voice was trembling. Haley, are you saying you're rich? I'm saying I don't need your charity, I replied. And I'm saying that the contract in front of me isn't an acquisition offer. It's an insult. I picked up the leather folder, the one containing the check for $20,000. I didn't open it. I slid it back across the table until it hit Nathan's chest. Now, I said, let's talk about what you really came here to steal. Nathan picked up the leather folder, his hands trembling slightly. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry, hacking cough. This is ridiculous, he spat, tossing the folder back onto the table. You expect us to believe that you, someone who couldn't even pass intro to engineering, built $100 million company? You probably hired some cheap freelancers to build this backend. It's derivative. It's unoriginal. Derivative? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. That's an interesting word choice, Nathan, because it brings us to the second part of my presentation. I tapped a key on my laptop. The screen changed again. This time, it displayed a complex 3D schematic of a high-efficiency robotic joint. It was labeled the Ghost Actuator. Recognize this? I asked. Nathan froze. Of course he recognized it. It was the flagship product of his logistics division, the breakthrough innovation that had earned him his promotion to COO last month. The industry had hailed it as a stroke of genius. That's my design, he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. That's the Ghost. We patented that last year. You filed for a patent last year, I corrected, but you didn't design it. I clicked the remote. The screen split. On the left was Nathan's patent filing dated 14 months ago. On the right was a scanned image of a coffee-stained napkin and a series of CAD files. These are the original schematics, I said, dated 3 years ago. The metadata on the files is encrypted and unalterable. And if you look closely at the scan of the napkin, you can see the date stamp from the coffee shop down the street from my old apartment. I walked around the table, stopping right behind his chair. I leaned down, whispering into his ear. You didn't invent the Ghost, Nathan. You found the early sketches in my recycling bin the day you came to check on me 3 years ago. You thought it was trash. You thought I was just doodling. You didn't realize you were stealing the rough draft of an industry standard. Lies, Nathan shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair toppled over. She's lying. I built that team. I led development. You led nothing, I said, stepping back. You reverse engineered a discarded prototype. And you did a poor job of it. Your version overheats after 48 hours of continuous use. Mine doesn't. I looked at my father. Richard was staring at the screen, his face gray. He knew engineering. He could see the dates. He could see the progression from my rough sketches to the finalized CAD files that predated Nathan's work by 2 full years. You stole from her? Richard whispered, his voice hoarse. The innovation that saved our quarterly earnings. You stole it from your sister? I didn't steal it, Nathan yelled, his composure shattering completely. She threw it away. It was garbage. I made it worth something. It wasn't garbage, I said coldly. It was version 1. I'm currently on version 5. And by filing that patent, Nathan, you didn't just commit fraud. You committed corporate espionage against the competitor who has the resources to bury you. I pointed to the screen. I have the audit logs. I have the metadata. And I have the best IP lawyers in Chicago on retainer. This isn't a family dispute anymore, Nathan. It's a crime scene. Nathan collapsed back into his chair, the fight draining out of him as the weight of the evidence settled. The room was silent except for the low hum of machinery, a constant reminder of the industry he had tried to steal but failed to understand. So here is how this ends, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. I tapped the remote one final time. The screen changed to a formal legal document. This is a hostile acquisition offer. The silent architect is acquiring your logistics division. My board approved it unanimously last night. We're not buying you out because we need your help. We're buying you out because your division is the weak link in my supply chain, and I'm tired of fixing your mistakes." Nathan stared at the screen, his mouth slightly open. "You can't do that," he whispered. "You can't just take it." "I can," I said, "and I have two options for you. Option one, you resign immediately. We frame it as a strategic pivot to pursue other interests. You walk away with a severance package and your dignity intact, though I advise you stay out of robotics." I leaned closer. Option two, I release the audit logs. I file the IP theft lawsuit. I destroy your reputation so thoroughly that you won't be able to get a job managing a vending machine, let alone a logistics company. And I drag the family name through a very public, very messy legal battle. I looked at my parents. What will it be? My father, Richard, looked from the screen to his son, then finally at me. For the first time in my life, I saw respect in his eyes. Not love, perhaps that ship had sailed, but fear and respect. He realized he was no longer looking at his disappointing daughter. He was looking at a titan. "Take the deal, Nathan," Richard said quietly. Nathan slumped, defeated. He signed the papers with a shaking hand. 6 months later, the warehouse was gone. Or rather, it had evolved. I had moved production to a larger facility, but I kept the original building. I stripped it down, repainted the walls, and filled it with new equipment. But this equipment wasn't for me. I stood on the mezzanine, looking down at the bustling floor below. It was filled with teenagers, kids in coveralls, with grease on their hands and sparks flying from welding torches. They were the failures, the dropouts, the kids who didn't fit the mold of traditional education but had brilliance burning in their fingertips. This was the Makers Institute. I had used my wealth to fund a trade school for the next generation of silent architects. Here, we didn't care about SAT scores or family pedigrees. We cared about what you could build. We cared about the territory, not the map. Nathan was gone, working quietly in real estate somewhere on the West Coast. My parents called occasionally, polite and distant, trying to bridge a gap that was now too wide to cross. I didn't hate them, I just didn't need them. A young girl caught my eye on the floor below, maybe 16, struggling with a soldering iron. She looked frustrated, on the verge of giving up. I walked down the stairs, my boots ringing on the metal. "You're holding it too tight," I said gently, coming up beside her. "Let the tool do the work." She looked up at me, surprised. I just can't get it right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this." I smiled, remembering a garage, a lonely night, and a decision that changed everything. "You're exactly where you need to be," I said. "You're building something, and that's the only thing that matters." My revenge wasn't destroying my brother. It was building a world where people like him couldn't stop people like us. I looked around at the sparks and the sweat and the brilliance, and I knew this was the only legacy worth building. Have you ever been underestimated because you didn't fit the mold? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you believe merit matters more than titles, share this video.